In this video tutorial, we'll look at Spring MVC as a RESTful web service. In the earlier tutorials, we looked at Spring MVC serving web pages. So we looked at JSPs, we looked at timeleaf, which will send HTML back to the browser. In web services, basically, you will be making a call and you'll be getting either XML or JSON data back. So when you get XML or JSON data back, you can use AngularJS as your model view, whatever W technology, and then AngularJS can look at this JSON data or an XML data and then populate it. So you'll be using with Ajax. So you'll be calling Ajax. So these are called like a single page application. So you will be having AngularJS as the model view, W, whatever technology. And then you'll be using Spring MVC RESTful web service for the data. So you'll be making some RESTful web service call and you'll be getting XML or JSON data back from the server, and then AngularJS will populate that data in its HTML template. So before we can build Spring MVC RESTful web services, you need a tool to test your web services. So in browser, you can do the GET requests, but you can't test really the POST, put, delete, and so on. There are different methods, and I have discussed that it is important that you look at these 12 rules to write RESTful web service that tells you what are the nouns, what are the verbs, and how to version the RESTful web service APIs and so on. They are really must, not only from an interview perspective, but also to write good RESTful web services. So now let's look at, first we will go and download a tool from the Wiz tools. It's called the REST client. It's a thick client tool that help you to type some URI so that you can test your web services. So everything is provided in the link below step by step. So I'll be going into the Wiz tools. So Wiz tools got a number of different tools, like you can have a REST client, you have a regex tester tool. So if you want to practice regex, you download this tool and then you practice your regex writing skills, which is an important skill to have as well. So here what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the GitHub here, and then there's the project basically. So you got a REST client and so on, and I'm going to go here under download, and then I'm going to go into wiztools.org download here. So you click on that. Then I'm going to look at the latest possible version is a zip files because I'm running on Windows. So I'm going to get this REST client -UI 322 jar with dependencies jar. So you just download it. I have already downloaded that jar, and then you go into your tool. So you have I have downloaded this into my download folder, and then from the downloads folder I have copied it over to my C tools. That's where I have got all my tools like Eclipse, Apache Tomcat, Maven, and so on. And then if you're running on a Windows, it's as simple as double clicking on it. But if you're writing outside in a DOS command or something, you can run the java -jar jar and then the name of the jar command, and that will automatically open it up. So that's the command you need to normally run. So it's java -jar REST client. That's where the path is, and you have to run it from the tools folder where this jar file is downloaded to. But in this case, if you're running in Windows, it's as simple as I'm double click on it. Now it's starting the REST client. So you can see in the REST client, it's a very simple thing. You put the URI at the top. So that's you're going to localhost 8080 if the server is running. And then it'll say what kind of HTTP method you want to do. This is the verb basically. So you want to get. Get is basically get resources. And post is to create a new resource. And put is to update an existing resource. And delete is to delete a resource, and head is to get the HTTP metadata and so on. So you have full control over. And also when you're doing a post request, you can go into the body. I got to change here to post, and then I can go into body, and I got to select a particular type. So I'm going to do a string, and you can click on this and you can set it to application/XML or whatever in this case. So you go application then /XML, which is the MIME type. That's the type of data you're expecting it back, and then you can post your XML data or whatever, and you can send it to the server. So it's quite a handy tool to test all different types of RESTful web services. In this case, I'm going to write a very simple RESTful web service to test the get method. So that's the first step. So we got our tool ready, so I'll just minimize that. And now let's go to Eclipse and start writing our RESTful web service using Spring MVC. So the most of the part here is very similar to writing JSP based things. So we looked at earlier on, we have a view resolver and we output the view here. You got the controller. So most of the part is the same. The only difference being when you're writing a RESTful web services as opposed to doing an MVC web framework where you send HTML data back, you won't be having this bit here, but you will be having the controller, handler, dispatcher, servlet, everything the same for the RESTful. And the only difference being, after you do set it up to the model, when you send the data back, you annotate it with @response_body and you send an XML or JSON data depending on how it's configured directly back to the browser. So you won't be sending any HTML via the view technology like Vue.jsp or Timeleaf or whatever, but you will be annotating as a response body and directly sending XML or JSON data to the browser. And then the browser side will be having AngularJS or whatever. It'll look at that data and it'll populate the template on the client side itself. So AngularJS is more like a client side MVW framework. So model view controller or model view, whatever they call it, MVW. I've already got some posts on it. If you search for MVW, you will get some articles on javasuccess.com. So the first step is you need to, like any other step, you need to go into your pom.xml file. And in this case, because we are not going to use any view technologies, we are going to use XML data. You need to get some kind of a library that will map your Java model object back to the XML or JSON. So it's called the marshalling and unmarshalling. So you can, if you are doing a post of an XML, it automatically gets converted to an object by this library, and then you are doing a get, any objects in Java POJ or plain old Java objects will get converted to either XML or JSON. So in order to do that, so you definitely need a servlet API library, you need a Spring MVC because we are going to use the same MVC controller thing. I've really commented out the view technology because we are not interested in any view technology at the moment. And this is where the JSON data binding comes in handy. So you go to com.fastxml.jackson.co. This is the Jackson is a JSON library. So we're using the JSON data bind. So if you want to see, I can copy this group ID. So I do a Control-C. Then I go and open a search.maven.org website. Then I put G for group, colon, and press the group ID. And if I do search for here, so I can see the Jackson data bind and Jackson core and Jackson annotation. So there are different Jackson libraries here. And the one I'm interested in, Jackson data bind. So this is the Jackson data bind. So I look at the latest possible version. This is a PR4. So I'm going to here and look at the different versions. So I'll go to, back click and click on all versions, and I'm actually using the 2.8.9, I think. So it is a 2.8.9, and also you got the same Jackson data format, which is different. This one is for the XML. So if I go and click on this group ID and go back to my search.maven.org again and copy that particular group ID. So it's basically G for group ID, colon, and then you pass in your group ID, and I do a search. And you can see there's a data format here. And even, if you're working on a big data world, this Avro is a big data format, Protobuf is a big data format, and so on. And we are interested in the XML. So Jackson data format XML here. So you got the Jackson data format XML. So once you got this in the pom.xml file, I can go in and select my Maven dependencies. I can see all the Spring dependencies are there for the Spring MVC. Then I've got all the relevant Jackson data bind. I got Jackson annotations, Jackson core, and I got the one for the Jackson data format XML and so on. So once we have both of them, how we use the URI and how we annotate our web services will decide whether your Java objects are going to be unmarshaled into an XML or JSON. So we will look at that soon. So we have all our libraries set up correctly now through the pom.xml file. Now next step is to create a model. So in this case, I'm going to create a model called account. So I'm going to go into my tutorial model and login, not login.java in this case, there was a previous, it's account.java. It is a very simple one. All I have done is create an account class, implement serializable so it can be easily unmarshaled and marshaled. It's a good practice to serialize your POJO model objects. You need to provide a serial version number when you do serializable. Then I have defined three properties: an ID, that is an account ID, account name, and a balance, which is a big decimal. So once you have defined that, I have also gone and created a constructor that will take all these parameters. So when I do post or create, then I can create that object. And it is one of the Java's basics that by default, if you don't define any constructors, automatically Java will create an account as a default constructor without any parameters. That will be automatically created when it compiles a Java source code into a bytecode. But if I explicitly specify a constructor that takes three parameters, then you need to explicitly provide a default constructor, because when you do get or whatever, the Spring library might be using an account constructor, and then it will be applying a lot of setter methods to it. And if you are new to Eclipse, all you can do is you have to define only these classes and these fields, and then you can right click on it and say source generate constructor using fields. So you will create a constructor using the fields that you select. Also you can say generate getters and setters. It will automatically generate the getters and setters for you. You don't have to type it in. And also it's good to have a generate toString method, so you can also automatically generate the toString. And also if you want to generate any hash code or equals method, you can also generate hash code and equals. So that's the very handy thing that Eclipse provide you. So you can do less typing and you just provide these fields and generate all those methods with the help of Eclipse. So now I have got this object model defined. Now the next step is to write the controller. So in this case, let's go to the controller. So I'm going to call it the account controller here. So I'm going to version my RESTful web services, because you can have different versions. I'm going to call it anything with V1, version 1, and a domain. So in this case, I'm just going to call this a forecasting your accounts and so on. So it's just a forecasting domain. And then same way as we did for the Vue.jsp controllers, we are going to request map with the request mapping of accounts defined as that controller, and this is going to be a get method. This is the verb, and accounts is a noun. So basically in a URI you don't put any verbs. Verbs you define it by, you want to do a get method or a post method or a head, delete, and so on. So that's how you manage your verb, and each of these verbs will designate the CRUD operation. CRUD means create, read, U for update, and D for delete. And in this case, C is CRUD. C in CRUD is basically post, to create a new object. R in read is same as get, and U in update is same as a put, and D in delete is same as the delete here. So that's how the RESTful web services work. And then what we have done is, say we are not returning any JSP page or a time leaf or anything like that out of here. So what we are doing is, I'm creating an account array and passing all these account objects, and then I'm saying I'm going to do a get method here, and then I'm saying accounts is my URI relative path account. So it's going to be whatever the servlet context, then /v1 /forecasting, then /accounts is going to come into this particular method. And then it is important, if you are using at controller, it is important you annotate it with at response body. That means these accounts will automatically get unmarshaled using the, we already added in the previous step data binding. So we added the Jackson, JSON, and XML frameworks. They will automatically convert these accounts to either JSON or XML and send it back to the client. So we will see in a minute. Actually, you can control what output, whether it's JSON or XML, by a number of different ways. I'll look at that later. So it's basically here what we are doing is we're constructing an array of accounts, hard coding it. In real application, when you do get accounts, you'll be going to the database, get the data from the database, and then you will be mapping them to these account objects that we have already defined, and then you will be returning a collection of accounts objects. So this one is a very trivial application, so we're not going to a database as such. I'm just hard coding it and creating some account objects directly through my Java code. And once your controller is defined, everything else pretty much same as what we did in the previous tutorials. You have a config here. You go into simple web configuration. I've just commented out all the time leaf things we don't need at all. All you need is just to define a simple web configuration, and then you say to enable MVC, to enable Spring Web MVC. Then you are saying this is a configuration class, this one it is. You can do XML based configuration, this is Java based configuration, so you define it as a configuration. And the component scan will help you to scan for your controllers. For example, in this case we are using a account controller that is sitting in com.mytutorial.controller package, and you are saying this is the base package to start searching for anything with @controller annotation. So it'll be going in and looking into this package, and then it'll be finding this @controller annotation, and it knows it's a controller class. Then it will check what's the URI is with. If any URI is with v1 forecasting, then it will go into this object, and then you might have number of different methods. It will be look for the another relative URI. If anything has got v1 forecasting / accounts, then it will end up inside this method. And that's a configuration. And then we'll be using a simple web app initializer. This is the one to bootstrap your dispatcher servlet, for example. So you're saying we are mapping this to simple web configuration class. That's what we earlier looked at. That knows how to component scan for your controllers. So you need to get that through this get root config classes, and then automatically the dispatcher servlet will be bootstrapped with the sim web initializer, because it makes use of the servlet 3 spec and onwards. Java allows you to not have web.xml file. You can bootstrap it through the Java based classes. So that's what Spring taps into, and this automatically, this particular instance will be created when the Tomcat engine, servlet engine starts, and it will automatically create an instance of the simple web app initializer, and it will start executing this method, and through this method it will bootstrap the simple web configuration. And then here we are saying any URI that's coming with after the servlet context, if you have /entry /*, you need to use the dispatcher servlet. And then all we have to do is now right click on it, run as maven install, and you will get a package. You will get a WAR file. So once you get the WAR file, you just need to go into the target and then do copy. Then I'm going to paste this. I've already started the Tomcat server, it's running, so you can either copy and start the Tomcat server, or if the Tomcat server is already started, still you can go and copy it, and it'll do a hot deploy for you. That means it'll automatically take in the new changes. So you go in here, Apache Tomcat again, and into the web apps, and I'm going to paste this, replace it, and you will automatically see here, it'll automatically go and load the thing again. See, it has moved few lines, it's loading the new WAR file again. And now I can go into the client, and I'm going to type in the URI. So HTTP is the protocol, localhost is I'm running on my local machine, 8080 is where we started our Tomcat server. Tomcat normally runs on 8080, but you can change the Tomcat configuration to run on different port. Here it is 8080 is the port it's listening on. And then I know that I'm interested in the get method, so I select get, that's the verb, and account, so anything plural. So because I want number of different accounts, so I'm just doing account. If I want one particular account, you say /account / the account's ID, like 1 2 3 or whatever. We will look at that in the next tutorial. And then here in the URI you can see simple web. Simple web is the web application context, which is nothing but in this case the simple web WAR file. That's the simple web, the prefix here. You can see Tomcats explode that into a folder called simple web. So this is your web application context. And once you're inside the context, then you have the entry. So in your web.xml file, not web, sorry, the web initialized XML file, we have specified anything that comes with /entry / should go to this dispatcher servlet. So Spring, it will go to the Spring's dispatcher servlet. Spring will take care of it. And here, then the relative path is v1 forecasting. So v1 forecasting is what inside our account controller we said is a version 1, and the domain we are working on is called forecasting. And then we say account, so it's going to come into this particular method. So this is the accounts thing, is going to come in, and then I click on send. Now HTTP status say 200 means it's a success. Then I go into the body. Here we get an XML thing back. So you got automatically, it has converted the accounts. Then it provided an item here wrapper, because you need to have a collection of items. So it's inside the item, then you have ID, name, and balance. This ID, name, and balance come from this account Java class, which is ID, name, and balance. Now, how do I do JSON data if I want it? There are a couple of ways you can do it. One way, I go in here, and to the accounts I put .json for JSON, and then I click on the play button. Now you get a JSON data back. So JSON, the square bracket at the two end is for the array. Then inside that, within the curly bracket, you have one object starting from one curly bracket to another, which is ID of 123, John R, and balance of 235. Another one is ID of 345, Peter J, and balance of 2505. So which is nothing but these hard-coded values that I'm sending. See, this 123, John R, and the amount here, and the other one is 345, Peter J, and the amount here. So that's one way of controlling whether you want XML or JSON back. So by default, it gives you an XML back, but then if you call this is XML here, then in the URI you affix with JSON, enter, and you get the JSON back. That's another way. So what if you don't want to send XML at all, you only want JSON? So there are a number of ways you can do it. So here what you do is you comma and you say produces, and then within curly bracket I say media type, and then I go to say you can select application XML value or application JSON value. So I'm selecting application JSON value. I have saved it. Now what I've said is I'm only interested in this producing a type of JSON. If I want only XML, then I just change this to XML, then it will return only XML. So I can do XML or JSON. So let's do the JSON for the time being. So JSON is more compact and used widely, so it's less verbose. Okay, now I go and right click on it, run as Maven install. So I'm going to build the package, I'm going to deploy it again. So it's building at the moment, it finished building. So I go and inside the target folder, refresh, I should get a new simple woe. I copy this, my Tomcat is already running. I'm going to do a hot deploy. I'm going to just paste it here, replace the original file, and I'll see it'll start loading. It's loading now. New WoW file, it's loaded. Then I go to my here. Now even without putting the JSON there, I should be getting a JSON data back. Here we go, we get the JSON data back. So no matter what we call, we always get the JSON data back, because we said in a service that we only need JSON back. So it's very compact and less verbose. Now if you want to do XML back, you go back to your thing again and change this producers to XML. So now I change this to XML. And also another important thing, with the later versions of Spring, I think it's from Spring 4 onwards if I remember correctly, you don't even have to put the @response body thing, because @response body annotation is the one telling that we are going to send this to the body directly. So we are not going to use any view technology, anything like that, to send it to a JSP as a JSP view page or a timely view page. we are saying we are going to send it directly as XML or a JSON. But if you remove this, you got to use the new annotation. In this case, instead of saying just controller, you say a REST controller. So here's the REST controller. Then I can delete that, and I do Control Shift O. See, there are a couple of imports that are not used. That's what this yellow color thing is saying. This response body is not used and the controller is new used. This is an annotation and this is the controller, both annotations. So if I do Control Shift O, or I can do right click and say source, and then I can say organize imports. So where's organize imports? Here it is. Now the unused ones are gone. This asterisk here is saying it's not saved yet, so I'm going to click on save and it's saved. So now we are using a REST control annotation instead of the control annotation, and because we are using REST controller, we can just get rid of at response body annotation here. So now I'm going to build this again. So right click on it, run as Maven install, so which is going to build the WAR file for us, WA archive file, because we have already mentioned in the pom.xml file the artifact type is a WAR. So automatically Maven will bring in the WAR plugin and it will generate a WAR file for us. So for example, here the packaging is WAR. If you say packaging is jar, then it will create a jar file. And inside the WAR file, you will have the lib folder where automatically all those dependencies will go in here. Maven dependencies will go into the lib file. So we'll go and quickly have a look at that as well. Let's copy this and I'm going to paste it here and replace this, and automatically Tomcat is going to load this and put it into the simple web folder. So just wait for it to load that. So it has already finished. And then if I go into simple web, you can see you got a webin folder. Inside that you have a lib folder, all this, see Jackson data bind, Jackson data XML, Jackson core, so all those dependency libraries, Spring MVC, Spring Web, and so on. And these are the third-party libraries that we use via the pom.xml file. Then inside the classes you will have my tutorial, you will have config where you have both the configurations we looked at, and you have the model where we will have the account class, and we have the controller where we have the account controller class. So these are all byte code, so you can't really, it's in a non-readable format. Your Java files get converted to .class file. So if I go back to here, now if I go back in here, you remember that I have changed my thing to XML. So we have changed this to use use the application XML here, and also we just remove the response body and put the address control annotation there. So now I go and run this again. So you get an XML back here, and then it works as well. So it is good to use REST controller. So you have to use one less at response body annotation is no longer required. So basically what has happened is, as we looked in here, it has gone through all these paths, go to the controller. In this case it's a account controller. And then because in the class path we have these data bind libraries from Jackson, faster XML, and so on, it'll automatically, and we annotating and saying this is a REST controller, or if you're not using a REST control annotation, you're using a control annotation, you are telling Spring that we are only interested in sending it as a data, we don't want any view technology, and then it'll automatically unmarshal that from Java account object to corresponding XML or JSON data and send it back to the client browser. So in the next tutorial I'll be going through a post request, and then also you can make requests to say I can call additional methods like account 123. So if I'm interested in getting just one account, there are different nouns we can use. All these are nouns basically, and also I can use a account, and then I can change it to post, and then I can post some XML content from the browser. So if you're using AngularJS or whatever, and you are creating a new account through the web forms or whatever from client side, and you can post that XML. AngularJS can post JSON or XML, and it'll automatically go to the controller. So we have to create some more methods here, and this controller can then call some persistence API like Hibernate or JDBC, whatever, and then store it into the database. So we will see you in a next tutorial to extend this RESTful web service.